Reckless, rebellious, irresponsible, moody. These are the stereotypical descriptions of teenagers in today's society. So why are teenagers more prone to acting and behaving in such manners? Maybe it's the hormones, or maybe it's society, or maybe not. Maybe it's actually just the development of the brain that's at fault. So I'm Erika, and my topic is the teenage brain. Some background. Scientists once believed that by the time you reach adolescence, your brain was already completely developed. They thought that the only difference between the teenage brain and the adult brain was that teenage brain had a lot more hormones. So now scientists are finding out that it's more than just the hormones, and they're finding out that the teenage brain is actually just literally a few wires short of being connected. So speaking to a room consisting mainly of teenagers, I'm sure many of you guys have been a little irresponsible or reckless at one point, and many of you guys have probably have parents who have at least at one point in your lives been like, what were you thinking? So you should all know what's going on in your brain that make you prone to bad decisions. Okay, as a teenager myself, I know what it's like to be a little irresponsible at times. I mean, sneaking out of the house, driving a little too fast sometimes. So, I mean, I know my actions are consequences, but why do I act that way anyway? So I figured it was a little more than teenage rebellion. So as I researched, I found that I was right. Okay, so during adolescence, the brain is undergoing various changes in development that make us prone to bad decisions. So first I'm going to talk about the development process of the human brain, and then I'm going to talk about the what this has to do with effects on behavior, and then I'm going to talk about what can be done during this period of development. So as I said before, scientists once thought that the brain was completely developed by the time you reach adolescence, but actually the brain is only 80% developed. So this is a chart of brain size. As you can see, by the time you're around 12 or adolescent, your brain size doesn't really change much. However, according to an article from May 18, 2003 in USA Weekend magazine entitled The Teen Brain, Tim Wendell stated that although brain size doesn't change much, there's still a lot of development that's going on in the brain, and it won't be completely developed until you reach adulthood. So there's still dramatic changes to that work. So, but what are these changes? So the first of these changes occurs in the frontal lobe of the brain. It's located right behind your forehead in the front of your brain. It's basically responsible for processes such as reasoning and judgment, so your ability to tell right from wrong. In this part of the brain during adolescence, the wires haven't really connected yet. So another change is in the gray matter and the white matter. These are part of the central nervous system, and the gray matter is responsible for the amount of information you can process, and the white matter is responsible for your faster nerve signal transmission. As you can see from this picture, so as you go older, there's more blue and purple, which means there's less gray matter. So as you grow, your gray matter begins to thin out, and your white matter begins to thicken. So now that you know about the changes in the brain, you're probably wondering what that has to do with the effect on behavior. So the changes the brain experiences is partially responsible for how someone acts. So going back to the frontal lobes, according to a September 2008 article entitled The Teen Brain published in Harvard Magazine, Deborah Reuter explains that this part of the brain, the frontal lobe, that's responsible for cognitive processes such as reasoning, is also the last part of the brain to develop, and that won't develop until you're around the 20s to 30s. So since that's not developed yet, judgment is basically compromised, and sometimes you're not really needed. It's also the part of the brain that tells you to make choices and do actions without expecting a reward. So since that's not developed yet, some teenagers tend to perform an action and expect for a reward. So if let's say a teenager were to sneak out of the house, they'll do it because the risk of reward of sneaking out and having fun and going with their friends is much greater than the risk of consequence of getting grounded for a week. So the other one is the gray and white matter. So there's a little bit of a trade-off here. So as the gray matter begins to thin out, when you grow older, the gray matter is responsible for the amount of information you can process, and the white matter that's responsible for how fast you can process that information, it thickens. So the trade-off is that you get fewer connections in your brain, but they're also much faster. So this has an effect on plasticity, which is your ability to learn things easily. So as you grow older, it'll be harder to pick up on new skills, which is basically where the phrase use it or lose it comes to play. If you're an adult and you haven't picked up on a skill, you're probably going to have a really hard time picking it up now. So if you don't know how to ride a bike or play an instrument by the time you're an adult, it's going to be really hard to pick up on that. Also, if you all you know how to do, if the only skill you have is sitting on the couch and changing the channel, that's probably the skill that's going to be sticking with you throughout adulthood. Okay, so now that we know how these changes affect behavior, I'll talk about what can be done to aid teenagers during this time of development. So, being a teen isn't a bad thing. In the 2003 book, The Primal Teen, Barbara Stroud states that it's important for teenagers to understand the wirings of their brain in order to understand that the brain is still undergoing development. In terms of parents, she wants parents to understand that they shouldn't liken the behavior of their teenagers to being just a phase that they're going through. As parents, it's important for them to know that um, teenagers have different set of emotions and different mindsets, so it's important for them to provide foresight and to sort of nudge their kids in the right direction and to sort of act as a surrogate frontal lobe. So now that we know a little bit about the development of the brain, overall, its incomplete development may be partially to blame for the stereotypical irresponsible behavior during the time of adolescence. So in conclusion, the reckless and risky behaviors associated with teenagers may be due partly to the fact that the part of the brain responsible for cognitive processes is still undergoing development. So today I talked about the development of the teenage brain, and what that has to do with behavior, and I talked about how what should be done during the time of development. So teenagers have been prone to taking risks despite consequences. Although society and environmental factors may be at play, there's still much more going on, and some factors are simply beyond our control in terms of us acting irresponsibly or reckless. Thank you.